Admiral Thexkar stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring at the small blue planet through the massive viewing screen. His forearms crossed behind his back as he studied the intelligence reports floating in the air before him. Earth, a primitive world with creatures called humans. His scouts had been watching them for months, and everything pointed to an easy victory. The humans had barely reached their own moon. Their weapons were crude chemical explosives and simple nuclear devices. Their ships could not even leave their solar system. According to every calculation, this would be the easiest conquest in the Zelkari hegemony's 800-year history. "Admiral," his communications officer called out, her voice carrying across the vast bridge. "We are receiving a transmission from the planet." Thexkar's mandibles clicked with amusement. "Already? We have not even issued our surrender demand yet." He gestured with one of his lower arms. "Put it through." The holographic display shimmered and showed a human female. She had brown skin and dark hair pulled back neatly. Her clothing was simple but clean. Most importantly, she was smiling. Not the desperate smile of fear that the Admiral had seen on countless other worlds, but something warm and genuine. "Greetings," the human said, her voice clear and friendly. "I am Ambassador Sarah Chen, speaking on behalf of the United Nations of Earth. We detected your ships entering our solar system, and we wanted to welcome you to our neighborhood." Thexkar's three eyes widened. In 8 centuries of conquest, no species had ever welcomed his fleet. They usually sent desperate military transmissions or begged for mercy. This was new. The human continued speaking. "We know this must be your first time visiting our system, so we wanted to invite you to learn about our world and our people. We have prepared cultural exchange programs, tours of our most beautiful cities, and we would be honored to host a formal dinner at our United Nations headquarters." The bridge fell silent. Every Zelkari warrior stared at the transmission in confusion. Science Officer Klethai leaned forward from her station. "Admiral, our translators must be malfunctioning. Surely they meant to send a surrender message." But the human kept talking. "We understand that space travel is long and difficult. Your crew must be tired after such a journey. We have prepared comfortable accommodations and our finest food. Our scientists are excited to meet you and learn about your technology, and we hope you might be interested in ours as well." The transmission showed images of Earth. Beautiful cities with towering buildings. Green parks full of strange plants. Humans of all colors and sizes going about their daily lives, seemingly unaware that a conquest fleet hung in their space. "We know that first meetings between different species can be challenging," Ambassador Chen continued. "That is why we want to take our time and do this right. Please consider our invitation. We believe that friendship is always better than conflict." The transmission ended. The bridge remained silent for a long moment. Finally, Thexkar's tactical officer spoke up. "Admiral, this has to be some kind of trick. No species welcomes conquest." But Thexkar was intrigued. In all his years of service, he had never encountered anything like this. His orders were simple: conquer the planet and add it to the hegemony. But his curiosity was stronger than his duty, at least for now. "Prepare a diplomatic shuttle," he ordered. "Select a small team. We will accept their invitation." 2 days later, the Zelkari shuttle descended through Earth's atmosphere. Klethai watched through the shuttle's windows as they approached something called New York City. The human settlement was massive, stretching as far as her eyes could see. Towers of metal and glass reached toward the sky, and thousands of small vehicles moved along organized pathways. "Look at the population density," she whispered to her companion, Security Chief Drakmore. "There must be millions of them in this one location." The shuttle landed in a large open area surrounded by the tallest buildings. As the doors opened, Klethai expected to see human soldiers with weapons drawn. Instead, she saw crowds of humans holding flowers and small, colorful banners. Many were holding small rectangular devices, pointing them at the shuttle and making excited noises. Ambassador Chen waited at the bottom of the shuttle ramp, still wearing that strange, warm smile. Next to her stood a tall human male in a military uniform, but his posture was relaxed and friendly. "Welcome to Earth," Chen said as the Zelkari delegation stepped onto the ground. "This is General Harrison, our military liaison. He will be helping to coordinate your visit." General Harrison stepped forward and did something unexpected. He bowed slightly, a gesture of respect. "It is an honor to meet you," he said. "We have prepared a tour that we hope will interest you." The crowd of humans pressed closer, but not in a threatening way. Children held up drawings of Zelkari ships. Adults offered strange food items wrapped in paper. An elderly human female approached Klethi directly and handed her a small bunch of yellow flowers. "Welcome to our world, dear," the elderly human said softly. "I hope you like it here." Klethi stared at the flowers in confusion. In her 20 years of military service, no conquered species had ever given her gifts. She looked to Drakmor, who seemed equally puzzled. Ambassador Chen led them to a large ground vehicle. "We thought you might like to see some of our city first, then visit our United Nations building. Tonight we have prepared a dinner with foods from all around our world." As their vehicle moved through the city streets, Klethi watched the humans going about their daily lives. They seemed happy and peaceful. Children played in small parks while their parents watched. Humans sold food and goods from small stands on the streets. Nobody seemed afraid. "Tell me," Chen said as they drove, "what is your home world like? We are very curious about your culture." For the next hour, the humans asked question after question about Zelkari society, their technology, their art, their food. They seemed genuinely interested in learning. It was not the desperate questioning of species trying to find weaknesses in their conquerors. It was simple curiosity. That evening, the formal dinner took place in a massive hall filled with representatives from every human nation. The food was strange but surprisingly good. The humans had even prepared dishes that matched Zelkari dietary requirements. Though how they had learned this information, Klethi could not guess. During the meal, she found herself sitting next to a human scientist named Dr. Elizabeth Reeves. The human was fascinated by Zelkari biology and asked thoughtful questions about their three-eye vision and four-arm coordination. "Your species must see the world very differently than we do," Dr. Reeves said. "We would love to learn more about your perspective." As the evening continued, Klethi felt something she had never experienced before during a conquest mission. She felt welcome. These humans treated her not as an enemy or even as a superior being to be feared, but as a friend to be learned from. General Harrison made a speech welcoming the Zelkari delegation and expressing hope for peaceful relations between their species. Ambassador Chen presented Admiral Thexkar with a small gift, a crystal sculpture of Earth created by human artists. As they returned to their shuttle that night, Drakmor voiced what they were all thinking. "This is not normal, Admiral. Conquered species do not behave this way." Thexkar held the crystal sculpture, watching the way human lights reflected through it. "No," he agreed. "They do not." But as he looked back at the glittering human city, he found himself looking forward to tomorrow's cultural exchanges. For the first time in his military career, conquest felt less important than understanding. 3 weeks had passed since the Zelkari delegation first landed on Earth. Every day brought new surprises that confused Admiral Thexkar more than the last. The humans continued their strange hospitality, showing the alien visitors everything from their art museums to their sports stadiums. They answered every question freely and seemed genuinely happy to have guests. But something bothered the Admiral. While his small diplomatic team enjoyed human friendship, his main fleet remained hidden behind the outer planets, waiting for orders to begin the invasion. Every day he delayed meant more questions from the Hegemony High Command. Yet every day on Earth made him more curious about these unusual creatures. On this particular morning, General Harrison had arranged a special tour. He stood in the lobby of what humans called the Smithsonian Museum, wearing his usual friendly smile and casual military uniform. Next to him, Dr. Elizabeth Reeves waited with several data tablets and a collection of small artifacts. "Today we want to show you something about human history," Harrison said, as the Zelkari group gathered around him. "We think you will find it interesting." They walked through halls filled with strange displays. Klethi stopped at a case containing what appeared to be primitive tools made from stone and metal. The information placard explained that these were weapons used by ancient humans. "Your species fought with rocks and metal blades?" Science Officer Klethi asked, examining a sword that looked like it could barely cut through thick cloth. Dr. Reeves nodded enthusiastically. "For thousands of years, that was our most advanced technology. But humans have always been very creative about solving problems, especially when those problems involve conflict." They moved to the next display, which showed larger weapons, cannons that fired metal balls using chemical explosives. Rifles that could kill at distances that seemed impressive for such primitive technology. Kledhai noticed that the humans had very detailed information about each weapon, including exactly how much damage it could cause and how it was used in various wars. "You kept very careful records of your wars," she observed. General Harrison nodded. "We believe it is important to remember our history, both the good parts and the bad parts. Every human child learns about our wars in school." The next room contained displays about something called World War II. The humans explained how their entire planet had been divided into two groups that fought each other with increasingly deadly weapons. The numbers were staggering. Millions of humans had died in just 6 years of fighting. Admiral Thexkar studied a display showing human aircraft from that period. They were crude metal constructions with simple propeller engines, but the tactical information showed they had been used very effectively. The humans had detailed battle plans, supply chain logistics, and coordination strategies that seemed surprisingly sophisticated for such primitive technology. "Your species fought itself?" he asked. "Many times throughout our history," Harrison replied calmly. "We have not always been good at getting along with each other. But we learned from our mistakes." The next section showed more recent human military technology. Nuclear weapons that could destroy entire cities, aircraft that moved faster than sound, submarines that could hide underwater for months. The progression from stone tools to these advanced weapons had taken only a few thousand years. Kledhai found herself studying the tactical displays with growing interest. The humans had not just developed better weapons over time, they had developed better strategies, better communication systems, better ways of organizing large groups of soldiers. Every war had taught them new lessons, and they had remembered every lesson. "This is quite impressive for a primitive species," she said without thinking. Dr. Reeves laughed. "Primitive? I suppose compared to your technology we must seem very basic. But you know what they say? Necessity is the mother of invention." They spent the rest of the morning looking at displays about human space exploration. The technology was indeed primitive compared to Zelkari ships, but the humans had accomplished remarkable things with their limited resources. They had built a space station, sent probes to distant planets, and even landed on their own moon using what amounted to controlled explosions. During lunch, Dr. Reeves sat next to Kledhai again. Over the past 3 weeks, the two had become genuine friends, sharing stories about their different worlds and comparing their scientific knowledge. Today, however, Dr. Reeves seemed more serious than usual. "Can I ask you something personal?" the human scientist said quietly. Kledhai nodded, chewing on a sandwich made from what humans called peanut butter and jelly. The combination had seemed strange at first, but she had grown to enjoy it. "Why are you really here?" Dr. Reeves asked. "Your ships are very advanced, and you have traveled a long way to reach our world. It must have been expensive and difficult. People do not usually make such journeys just to make friends." Kledhai stopped chewing. In 3 weeks, no human had directly asked about the purpose of their visit. They had all seemed content to assume it was purely diplomatic. She looked around the cafeteria, making sure no other Zelkari were close enough to hear. "Elizabeth," she said slowly, "what would you do if another species came to your world with a large fleet of warships?" Dr. Reeves was quiet for a moment. Then she smiled, that same warm smile that had confused Kledhai since their first meeting. "I suppose that would depend on their intentions," she said. "If they came as friends, we would welcome them as friends. If they came as enemies," she shrugged. "Well, I am just a scientist. I do not make those decisions. But what do you think your leaders would decide?" Dr. Reeves took a bite of her own sandwich and chewed thoughtfully. "I think," she said finally, "that humans have a long history of dealing with uninvited guests. We have gotten quite good at it over the years." That afternoon, General Harrison showed them videos from what humans called military exercises. Soldiers practicing with their weapons, aircraft performing complex maneuvers, ships coordinating large-scale operations. The technology was still primitive by Zelkari standards, but the level of organization and training was remarkable. "How many soldiers does your planet have?" Admiral Thexkar asked. "Oh, that depends on how you count," Harrison replied casually. "Active military forces, reserves, police, civilian militias, people with military training. The numbers get quite large when you add them all up." He showed them statistics on a large screen. Every human nation maintained armed forces. Many humans received military training even if they were not professional soldiers. The planet's total military capacity was much larger than the Zelkari had estimated in their initial intelligence reports. Of course, Harrison continued. We hope we never have to use any of this. Peace is much better for everyone. That evening, as the Zelkari delegation returned to their guest quarters, Kletai found herself thinking about her conversation with Dr. Reeves. The human had been asking the right questions. More importantly, she had been asking them in a way that suggested she already knew some of the answers. She made a decision that would have shocked her 3 weeks earlier. She activated her personal communicator and sent a private message to Dr. Reeves's communication device. Can we meet privately tonight? There is something important I need to tell you. An hour later, they met in a small garden behind the human building where the Zelkari were staying. Dr. Reeves arrived with 2 cups of something called hot chocolate, which had become one of Kletai's favorite human inventions. Elizabeth, Kletai said, accepting the warm cup gratefully, I need to tell you something, and I hope you will not think badly of me. Dr. Reeves sat down on a bench next to her alien friend. I could never think badly of you, Kletai. My people did not come here to make friends, Kletai said quietly. We came to conquer your world. That is what we do. We find planets with primitive species and we add them to our empire. Dr. Reeves nodded slowly. I wondered about that. You wondered? Well, yes. Your ships are clearly designed for war, not exploration, and your admiral keeps checking his communication device like he is waiting for orders from someone. Dr. Reeves smiled. Also, your species has a reputation in this part of the galaxy. Kletai stared at her friend. You knew? You all knew? We suspected from the beginning, Dr. Reeves said gently, but we wanted to give you a chance to know us before you made any decisions. Sometimes when people understand each other better, they find peaceful solutions to their problems. But what if we still decide to attack? Dr. Reeves was quiet for a moment, sipping her hot chocolate. Then she looked up at the stars visible above the garden. Then I suppose we would deal with that too, she said. But I hope it does not come to that. I have really enjoyed having you as a friend. As they sat together in the peaceful human garden, Kletai felt something she had never experienced before in her military career. She felt like she was standing at the edge of a very deep precipice and she was not sure which way she was going to fall. Admiral Thexkar stood in his private quarters aboard the flagship, staring at the urgent message from Hegemony High Command. The words glowed red in the holographic display, each one carrying the weight of absolute authority. Admiral Thexkar, your diplomatic mission has exceeded acceptable time limits. Intelligence reports indicate no strategic value in further delays. Begin conquest operations immediately. Resistance is expected to be minimal based on observed technology levels. Complete planetary subjugation within 72 hours. High Command out. The Admiral's 3 eyes closed slowly. Over the past month, he had sent regular reports to High Command describing human technology and military capabilities. Every report had been accurate, but he was beginning to suspect that accuracy was not the same as truth. The humans had shown them exactly what they wanted the Zelkari to see. He activated his communications array and sent coded signals to his fleet commanders. The invasion would begin at dawn. On Earth, in a secure facility buried deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, General Harrison sat in a room filled with massive displays showing every Zelkari ship in the solar system. Around him, dozens of technicians monitored communications intercepts, orbital tracking data, and real-time intelligence from sources the aliens never knew existed. Sir, reported Colonel Martinez from her station, we have intercepted Admiral Thexkar's activation codes. All Zelkari ships are moving to attack positions. Estimated time to orbital bombardment, 6 hours. Harrison nodded calmly. Signal all commands. Execute Operation Welcome Matt. Within minutes, communication channels around the globe carried the same message to military installations, research facilities, and civilian authorities. The month-long masquerade was over. It was time for humanity to show its true face. Dr. Elizabeth Reeves was in her laboratory when the alert came through. She had been expecting it for weeks, ever since her conversation with Kletai in the garden. The Zelkari scientist had been trying to warn human authorities about the coming invasion, not knowing that humanity had been preparing for this moment since the alien fleet first appeared on long-range sensors. She activated her personal communicator and sent a message to Kletai. Find somewhere safe and stay there. Do not trust anyone, even your own people. What happens next is not personal. High above Earth's atmosphere, the first Zelkari attack ships dropped out of their hiding positions behind the moon. Admiral Thexkar watched from his command bridge as his forces moved into standard conquest formation. 300 warships against a planet of primitive humans. It should have been over quickly. The first sign that something was wrong came when his navigation officer spoke up with confusion in her voice. "Admiral, I am detecting new orbital objects. They were not there during our reconnaissance flights." Thexkar looked at the tactical display. Dozens of large structures had appeared around Earth as if they had materialized from empty space. His science officer quickly ran sensor sweeps. "Sir, those are not natural formations. They appear to be artificial constructs, possibly defensive in nature." "Impossible," Thexkar said. "Human technology cannot hide objects that large from our sensors." But even as he spoke, the mysterious orbital structures began to move. They unfolded like enormous flowers, revealing arrays of equipment that his scanners could not identify. Warning indicators began flashing across his command displays. "Admiral," his weapons officer called out in alarm, "I am detecting massive energy buildups from the planetary surface. Multiple sites are powering up weapon systems that—" She paused, checking her readings again. "Sir, these energy signatures are beyond our current technology levels." The first human weapon fired exactly at dawn, Earth time. A beam of coherent energy reached across 300,000 kilometers of space in an instant and struck the Zelkari Vanguard ship Sektar directly in its main reactor. The massive alien warship simply ceased to exist, vaporized so completely that its destruction registered on sensors as nothing more than a brief flash of exotic particles. "Evasive maneuvers," Thexkar shouted, but it was already too late. The humans had opened fire from 17 different locations simultaneously. Orbital defense platforms that had been invisible moments before were now unleashing weapons that cut through Zelkari's shielding like it was made of paper. The human voice that came over the communications channel was calm and professional. It belonged to someone Admiral Thexkar recognized. "Admiral, this is General Harrison. I think we need to talk." On the surface, Harrison stood in his command center watching the battle unfold on screens that showed every detail of the engagement. The month of cultural exchanges had given humanity complete technical specifications of Zelkari ships, weapons, and defensive systems. Every weakness had been cataloged and analyzed. Every vulnerability had been mapped. The Zelkari fleet tried to regroup and mount a counterattack, but their formation scattered as more ships disappeared under the focused fire of weapons they could not understand. These were not the primitive nuclear devices and chemical rockets the humans had shown them in museums. These were technologies that made Zelkari science look like stone knives and bearskins. "Sir," reported his tactical officer, "enemy fleet is attempting to retreat. Should we pursue?" "Negative," Harrison replied. "Disable their engines and capture what we can. We want prisoners, not corpses." The hunting phase of the battle lasted 3 hours. Human fighter craft that moved faster than anything in the Zelkari fleet swarmed around the alien ships, using precision weapons to systematically destroy propulsion systems while leaving life support intact. Ships that had crossed the galaxy in Conquest found themselves drifting helpless in Earth's gravity well. Admiral Thexkar watched his fleet die around him with growing horror. This was not how Conquest was supposed to work. The humans were not fighting like a primitive species defending their world. They were fighting like apex predators who had been waiting patiently for their prey to walk into a trap. His flagship shuddered as human weapons disabled its main engines. Emergency lighting bathed the bridge in red as backup systems struggled to compensate for critical damage. Around him, his crew worked frantically at their stations, but Thexkar could see the defeat in their movements. "Admiral," his communications officer reported, "we are receiving a transmission from the human surface." The holographic display activated, showing General Harrison standing in what was clearly a military command center. Behind him, tactical displays showed the complete destruction of the Zelkari fleet with clinical precision. But the human's expression was not one of triumph or cruelty. He looked almost sad. "Admiral Thexkar," Harrison said formally, "I am authorized to accept your surrender. Your fleet is disabled and your crew will be treated according to the laws of war. However, I need you to understand something important." Thexkar found his voice. "What?" "This was not a battle," Harrison replied. "This was a demonstration. We could have destroyed your entire fleet in the first 30 seconds if we had wanted to. We chose not to because we preferred dialogue to destruction. On the human planet's surface, In a small laboratory that now seemed very far from the space battle, Dr. Elizabeth Reeves received a priority communication from Klethai. The Zelkari scientist was hiding in a storage compartment aboard one of the disabled ships. "Elizabeth," came Klethai's frightened voice. "What have your people done? Our entire fleet is destroyed." "Not destroyed," Dr. Reeves replied gently. "Captured. There is a difference, and that difference is important." "But how? Your technology was primitive. We saw your weapons. They were chemical explosives and simple nuclear devices." Dr. Reeves smiled, even though her friend could not see her. "Those were museum pieces, Klethai. We showed you our history, not our present. Humans have a saying, speak softly and carry a big stick. We spoke softly for a month. Now you have seen the stick. I do not understand. Why did you not simply destroy us when we arrived? Because we hoped you would choose to be friends instead of enemies. We gave you every opportunity to make that choice. We showed you who we really are underneath our weapons and defenses. We are people who give flowers to strangers and share food with visitors. We are people who prefer to build rather than destroy." There was a long pause before Klethai responded. "But you are also people who can destroy an entire Conquest fleet in 3 hours." "Yes," Dr. Reeves said quietly. "We are that too. Humans learned a long time ago that in a hostile galaxy, being kind is only possible if you are also strong enough to protect that kindness. We smile first, but we keep the fire ready just in case." As rescue shuttles launched from Earth to collect Zelkari survivors, Admiral Thexkar sat in his disabled command center and tried to understand what had happened. The humans had defeated his fleet without hatred, without cruelty, without the brutal triumphalism he had shown to countless conquered species. They had simply demonstrated that resistance was futile, then offered mercy to those who surrendered. It was, he realized with growing dread, exactly what he would have expected from a species that had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of war against their own kind. The humans had not been hiding their true nature during the cultural exchanges. They had been showing it. They were conquerors who had learned to conquer themselves first. And now they were coming for the rest of the galaxy. Captain Maria Santos stood in the docking bay of the captured Zelkari flagship, watching her boarding team make final preparations. Around her, 24 human Marines checked their equipment with the casual efficiency that came from years of training. Their armor was sleek and black, designed more for protection than intimidation. But the weapons they carried spoke of technologies that had not existed in any museum display. "Remember," Santos addressed her team, "these people came here to conquer our world, but they are still people. We treat prisoners with respect. We follow the rules of engagement, and we make sure they understand that humanity keeps its word." The airlock cycled open with a soft hiss. Santos led her team into the alien ship, moving through corridors that were designed for beings larger than humans. Emergency lighting cast everything in a red glow, and the air smelled of ozone and something like cinnamon. It was her first time aboard an actual alien vessel, but she moved with confidence born from months of studying captured Zelkari technology. They encountered the first group of alien crew members near the ship's main corridor junction. 5 Zelkari warriors stood with their weapons on the ground, their forearms raised in surrender. They were tall, imposing figures with gray skin and 3 large eyes, but Santos could see fear in their alien faces. "I am Captain Santos of the Earth Defense Force," she said, speaking slowly and clearly. "You are prisoners of war. If you cooperate, you will be treated fairly according to the laws of armed conflict." One of the Zelkari, apparently their leader based on the markings on his uniform, spoke in accented but understandable human language. You speak our words?" Santos nodded. "We have been learning your language for some time. We believe communication is important, especially in situations like this." She gestured for her team to secure the area. "What is your name and rank?" "Sub-Commander Vexeli, 4th Assault Legion," the alien replied. I must ask, how did you learn our language? We have had no contact before this invasion. You sent scout ships to observe our world over the past 2 years," Santos explained as her team began processing the prisoners. "We detected them and captured 2 of them. The crews were very helpful in teaching us about Zelkari culture and language." Vexeli's 3 eyes widened. "You captured our scout ships?" "That is impossible. Our stealth technology is far superior to anything your species possesses." Santos smiled, the same warm expression that had confused Admiral Thexkar during the diplomatic meetings. "Sub-Commander, I think you are going to discover that many things you believed about human capabilities were not entirely accurate. They continued through the ship, collecting surrendering crew members and securing key areas. Santos noticed that the alien vessel, while technologically advanced, was designed with the arrogance of a species that had never faced serious opposition. The security systems were sophisticated but not particularly creative. The defensive layouts followed standard patterns that assumed attackers would use similar technology and tactics. When they reached the bridge, Santos found Admiral Thexkar standing alone before the main viewing screen, staring out at the disabled remains of his fleet. The once mighty admiral looked older somehow, as if the past few hours had aged him years. "Admiral," Santos said formally, "I am here to accept your formal surrender and to ensure the safety of your crew." Thexkar turned to face her. His alien features were difficult for Santos to read, but she sensed resignation and something else. Curiosity, perhaps. "Captain Santos," he said, his voice carrying none of the authority it had held during the diplomatic meetings. "I have been wondering when you would arrive." "Sir?" "During our cultural exchanges, General Harrison mentioned that humans have a long tradition of studying their enemies. I have been thinking about that." "How long have you been studying us?" Santos considered her answer carefully. "We detected your advanced scouts 27 months ago. We have been preparing for your arrival ever since." 27 months, Thexkar repeated slowly. "And in that time you learned our language, analyzed our technology, and developed countermeasures for weapons we believed were centuries ahead of human science. Among other things." "Yes, sir." Thexkar was quiet for a moment, looking around his captured bridge. When he spoke again, his voice carried a weight of realization that Santos found almost sad. "We never had a chance, did we? This entire invasion was doomed from the moment we entered your solar system." Santos shook her head. "Admiral, you had every chance in the galaxy. We spent an entire month showing you who we are. We demonstrated our capacity for friendship, our willingness to share knowledge, our desire for peaceful relations. We gave you every opportunity to choose cooperation over conquest. But you were preparing for war the entire time." "We were preparing for the possibility of war," Santos corrected. "There is a difference. We hoped you would make a different choice." She activated a portable holographic display and showed him footage from the past month. Images of Zelkari crew members being welcomed by human children. Dr. Reeves sharing meals with Klethi. Admiral Thexkar himself accepting gifts from human artists. "Every one of those moments was genuine," Santos said. "Every friendship that was formed was real. The choice to proceed with invasion was yours, not ours." Thexkar studied the images with growing understanding. "You wanted us to see your strength through your kindness. We wanted you to see that strength and kindness are not opposites," Santos replied. "The strongest species are those that can choose mercy. We hoped you would recognize that and make the same choice." As her team finished securing the bridge, Santos received a communication from Earth. The voice belonged to someone Thexkar recognized. "Captain Santos, this is General Harrison. Please inform Admiral Thexkar that we need to discuss the location of other Zelkari forces in this region of space." Santos looked at the alien admiral. "Sir, General Harrison would like to speak with you about your other fleets." Thexkar's expression shifted to something like alarm. "Other fleets?" "Admiral," Harrison's voice came through the communicator. "We know that your species operates multiple conquest fleets throughout this galactic region. We have been monitoring your communications with other Zelkari commanders. We need to know their locations and target planets." "Why?" Thexkar asked. There was a pause before Harrison answered. When he spoke, his voice carried an undertone that made Santos straighten unconsciously. "Because, Admiral, we have decided that the Zelkari hegemony's 800-year conquest spree ends today. We are going to visit every world you have conquered, every species you have enslaved, and every fleet you have deployed. We are going to offer them the same choice we offered you." Santos watched Thexkar's face as the implications of Harrison's words sank in. The Admiral's three eyes widened with something approaching horror. "You mean to conquer the hegemony?" he whispered. "No," Harrison replied firmly. "We mean to liberate it. There is a difference, and that difference is important. We do not want to rule your empire, Admiral. We want to free every species that has been forced to serve it." Santos activated her portable display again, this time showing star charts marked with Zelkari territorial boundaries. As she watched, new information appeared on the charts. Human ships were already moving toward other Zelkari holdings, carrying the same message that had been offered to Thexkar's fleet. "We know the locations of 43 Zelkari-controlled star systems," Santos said. "We know which species live on those worlds and how long they have been under hegemony rule. We have been planning this operation for months." "This is impossible," Thexkar said. "You are one world. We are an empire that spans hundreds of systems." "Admiral," Santos said gently, "you came to our world with 300 ships and 500,000 crew members. We defeated your entire fleet in 3 hours without losing a single human life. Do you really think the size of your empire matters?" She showed him more tactical displays. Human ships were already engaging Zelkari forces at distant star systems. The pattern was the same everywhere. Overwhelming technological superiority, precision strikes to disable rather than destroy, and offers of mercy to those who surrendered. "But why?" Thexkar asked. "Why do you care what happens to species you have never met on worlds you have never seen?" Santos smiled again, and this time Thexkar understood what he was seeing. It was not the smile of a conqueror or the grin of a predator. It was the expression of someone who genuinely cared about the suffering of others. "Because that is who we are," she said simply. "We are a species that gives flowers to strangers and shares food with visitors. We are people who believe that every intelligent being deserves the chance to be free, and now we are strong enough to do something about it." As Santos led Admiral Thexkar from his bridge to the prisoner transport, she received reports from across the galaxy. Human forces were moving with devastating efficiency against Zelkari holdings, but unlike every other conquest in galactic history, they were not claiming territory or demanding tribute. They were simply removing Zelkari forces and returning control to the original inhabitants of each world. "Captain," Thexkar said as they walked through the corridors of his captured ship, "what will happen to my people?" "To the Zelkari civilians who had nothing to do with conquest." 6 months after the first human ships left Earth's solar system, the galaxy looked very different. Where once the Zelkari hegemony had ruled through fear and superior firepower, now hundreds of worlds flew under their own flags for the first time in centuries. The change had not been gradual or negotiated. It had been swift, decisive, and surprisingly gentle. Admiral Thexkar stood at the window of his comfortable quarters in the human prisoner facility, watching the daily activities of the compound below. It was not what he had expected from captivity. The humans had built what they called a rehabilitation center rather than a prison. Zelkari military personnel lived in individual rooms, ate good food, and attended educational programs designed to help them understand different ways of thinking about interspecies relations. The door to his room chimed softly. Thexkar turned to see Ambassador Sarah Chen entering with a tea service and her usual warm smile. Over the past months, she had visited him weekly, not as an interrogator or guard, but as someone genuinely interested in helping him process what had happened to his empire. "Good morning, Admiral," she said, setting the tea service on the small table near the window. "How are you feeling today?" Thexkar settled into one of the chairs, accepting the cup of human tea that had become part of their routine. "I have been watching the news broadcasts," he said. "Another former hegemony world declared independence yesterday. Kethmore, I believe it was called." Chen nodded, taking her own seat. "The Kethmorans are a fascinating species. They were one of the first worlds your people conquered, nearly 400 years ago. They have maintained their cultural traditions in secret all this time, waiting for the chance to be free again. And now they are." "Now they are," Chen agreed. "Along with 137 other worlds. The liberation is proceeding faster than we expected." Thexkar sipped his tea, a human beverage he had grown to appreciate. "Your people move quickly when they have decided on a course of action. We learned long ago that half measures often cause more suffering than decisive action," Chen replied. "When we decided to end the hegemony, we committed to doing it completely and quickly." Through the window, Thexkar could see other Zelkari prisoners attending what humans called cultural integration classes. They were learning about democratic government, individual rights, and peaceful conflict resolution. Many of his former officers had initially resisted these programs, but gradually most had begun to participate willingly. "I received a message from Klethai yesterday," Thexkar said suddenly. Chen's expression brightened. "How is she doing?" "She is working with Dr. Reeves at the new Xenobiology Institute. She says she has never been happier. Thexkar paused, considering his words. She also says she has been assigned to one of your diplomatic missions to the Outer Rim. The hegemony was not the only aggressive empire in this region of space, Chen explained. There are other species that believe conquest is the natural order of things. We want to offer them the same choice we offered you. Thexkar set down his teacup and looked directly at the human ambassador. And if they make the same choice I made? Chen's smile remained warm, but something in her eyes grew harder. Then they will face the same consequences you faced. We have learned that peace requires strength, Admiral. We are prepared to use that strength to protect the freedom we have helped create. The conversation was interrupted by a soft chime from Chen's communication device. She glanced at the message and her expression became more serious. Admiral, I have some news that I think you should hear directly from me, she said. The Hegemony High Command has been captured. Thexkar's 3 eyes widened. All of them? Every member of the ruling council, along with their support staff and the entire command structure. They were taken into custody 3 hours ago on Zelkar Prime. There was no resistance. For a moment, Thexkar could not speak. The Hegemony High Command had ruled his species for over 1,000 years. They were the ultimate authority, the unchanging center of Zelkari civilization. The idea that they could simply be captured by aliens was almost incomprehensible. What will happen to them? He asked finally. The same thing that happened to you, Chen replied. They will be given the opportunity to learn new ways of thinking about governance and interspecies relations. Some of them will probably choose to participate in the new galactic community. Others may prefer retirement. And Zelkar Prime? My homeworld. Chen activated a small holographic display that showed the Zelkari home system, instead of the massive military installations and orbital fortresses that had once protected it. The system now held a mix of human ships and vessels from dozens of different species. Your homeworld is now under the protection of the Galactic Liberation Coalition, she explained. The civilian population is free to choose their own government and determine their own future. Many of them seem quite excited about the prospect. The display showed scenes from Zelkar Prime's surface. Zelkari civilians were participating in something humans called town hall meetings, learning about democratic processes and discussing how they wanted to organize their society. It was a sight Thexkar had never imagined possible. How many of my people are participating in these democratic experiments? He asked. About 60% so far, with more joining every day. Your species is quite adaptable when given the opportunity. Thexkar watched the images of his people learning to govern themselves and felt something he had not experienced in his long military career. He felt proud of them, not for their conquests or their obedience to authority, but for their willingness to try something new. Ambassador Chen, he said slowly, I have been thinking about something you said during our first meeting 6 months ago. What was that? You said that humans believe friendship is always better than conflict. At the time I thought you were naive. I believed that conflict was natural and inevitable. Chen waited patiently for him to continue. I have been watching your species for 6 months now, Thexkar continued. You defeated the greatest military empire in galactic history in a matter of weeks. You could have enslaved us, destroyed us, or ruled us through fear the way we ruled others. Instead, you chose to rehabilitate us. You chose to help us become better than we were. We believe that every species has the potential for growth and change, Chen said. Including yours. Thexkar stood and moved back to the window, looking out at the peaceful scene below. Former Zelkari warriors were tending gardens, studying art, and learning skills that had nothing to do with conquest or violence. It was a transformation he would not have believed possible. I want to help, he said suddenly. Help with what? With the other aggressive species you mentioned? The ones in the Outer Rim who still believe in conquest. He turned to face Chen. I understand how military minds work. I know how empires justify their actions to themselves. Perhaps I could be useful in convincing them to choose a different path. Chen smiled, and this time the expression carried something new, not just warmth but respect. Admiral, I think that would be very helpful indeed. But are you sure? It would mean working alongside the humans who defeated your fleet. Thexkar considered the question. 6 months ago, the idea would have been humiliating beyond consideration. Now it felt like the most important work he could possibly do. Ambassador, I have learned something important during my time here. Your species does not smile to show weakness or to hide cruel intentions. You smile because you genuinely believe that understanding and cooperation are better than fear and domination. You have proven that strength can be used to protect rather than to oppress. He gestured toward the window, where his former officers were laughing at something one of their human instructors had said. You showed us fire when we brought you war, he continued. But you also showed us that there was another choice. You gave us the opportunity to be better than we were. Now I want to help offer that same choice to others. Chen stood and extended her hand in the human gesture of agreement. After a moment's hesitation, Thexkar reached out and shook it. Welcome to the Galactic Liberation Coalition. Admiral, she said. 3 weeks later, a mixed fleet of human and former Zelkari ships approached the border of the Krextar Empire, another aggressive species that had been expanding through conquest for centuries. Admiral Thexkar stood on the bridge of the human ship Phoenix, wearing a new uniform that bore the symbols of the coalition, rather than the hegemony. Captain Santos, now promoted to Commodore, commanded the fleet. Next to her, Dr. Reeves and Klethai worked together on xenological profiles of the Krextar species. The bridge was a mixture of human and Zelkari crew members, working together with the efficiency that came from shared purpose. Commodore, the communications officer reported, we are receiving a response to our diplomatic transmission. Put it through, Santos ordered. The holographic display showed a reptilian creature with scales that shifted color as it spoke. The Krextar Emperor's voice carried the same arrogant authority that Thexkar remembered from his own dealings with conquered species. Unknown vessels. You will withdraw from Krextar space immediately or face destruction. We do not negotiate with inferior species. Santos glanced at Thexkar, who nodded and stepped forward. Emperor Kesadon, Thexkar said formally,